what do you see as the vision for the Bucs?
Yeah, just one of my biggest takeaways from getting to talk with him is this certain sense of like a quiet confidence of, not overwhelmed by the expectations, because obviously when you have a year like Baker Mayfield had last season, top three in almost every statistical passing category in the National Football League, like the expectations do rise, especially when you're in a division as stinky as the NFC West, NFC South. It felt like there was this sense of like we open that, we welcome that openly, that we are happy with the expectations, and it also felt like there was a certain sense of confidence about where Baker Mayfield is in his career right now. That look, it's been a roller coaster. First overall pick, rookie of the year, and then he had his career that was in Cleveland, a lot of ups and downs, and then he was a backup, and now he's a franchise quarterback in Tampa Bay. That he probably at times in his career resented where he was at the time, but now is in a place that he can reflect on it and say, I wouldn't be the quarterback who I am now without going through all those trials and tribulations. So I feel like that kind of confidence and assuredness and just kind of happiness and contentness of where he is right now can be incredibly dangerous. Because when you have a quarterback that might be overly confident or maybe overly intimidated by the expectations that are ahead of them, then you might think, okay, like, can this guy really handle the expectations that are in front of him? I think there's just so much investment and belief in this Bucs team that like I stepped away from it feeling like, oh, this is a dangerous team because of the way that Baker Mayfield feels about it and the way that he's leading this team.
I think it's time to change some of our conversation about Baker Mayfield. And this is the hardest thing. Like we dive into these narratives as a general, society covering football. We dive into narratives and then we decide that that's going to be the case for a player forever. And I just think that's dangerous. So, Josh Allen, when he was drafted, was supposed to be inaccurate. And it felt like it took people a long time to change those narratives. Like Baker Mayfield was supposed to be a bust. And now I'm looking at a Baker Mayfield that is a job getter. Like Dave Canales is a head coach in the NFL because our presumption was, well, he saved Baker. Look at what he did. And then Liam Cohen comes in, has a year there, and all of a sudden he's a head coach for the Jags. And we're sitting here saying, yeah, but look at this Buccaneers offense and what he did last year. At some point, maybe we need to have that Josh Allen conversation. Like, remember, we thought Brian Daboll should get a head coaching job because he managed to fix all of these things with Josh Allen. Now it looks like maybe it was Josh more than it was Daboll. I'm looking at Baker Mayfield and saying, hey, maybe Baker is a head coach maker. Like there is a portion of all of this that my confidence in the Buccaneers comes in large part because I am wildly confident at this point that Baker Mayfield can play like one of, if not the best quarterback in his own conference. And if you've got one of, if not the best quarterbacks in your conference, Caroline, you have a real shot at the Super Bowl. This is a talented roster with a good head coach. And I think at this point, a great quarterback. Like I'm sorry for whatever Baker's ups and downs and peaks and valleys have been, but I don't really give a damn about that anymore. If I'm being asked a question this year, do I trust Baker Mayfield to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC? The answer to that is unequivocally yes.
And can you imagine telling your 2022 self that Baker Mayfield has the opportunity to unequivocally, hands down, be one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the NFC this upcoming season? Because even though I do feel like the overall narrative and perspective of Baker Mayfield has changed, I still don't think that people realize how good and efficient of a year he had last year. 4,500 passing yards, that's third best in the NFL. 41 touchdowns, tied for second best in the NFL. Like just those numbers alone, I think add context to the way that we feel about Baker Mayfield. And it exceeded even, feeling as good as I felt about Baker Mayfield coming off of last season. The numbers just solidify how good of a year he had last year. And every single year in Tampa Bay, the last 2 years at least, Baker Mayfield and this Bucs team have been a pleasant surprise. For 2025, with the expectations where they are, the pleasant surprise will be the Buccaneers are the number one seed in the NFC. Do you buy that? Do you buy that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can be the best team in the NFC this season?
I buy that they can get the number one seed because they play in a just god awful, trash, terrible. I cannot say it loud enough. Just junk division. So yes, do I believe? Like, look, they start the season with I think 4 wins. Like without even talking about Atlanta, they're 4-0 because they will sweep the Saints, and I think they'll sweep the Panthers. So they're 4-0 without even talking about the Falcons. Even if they split with the Falcons, they're 5-1 before they've even coughed. Like at some point, the Eagles are going to have to get through a Washington team that still deserves a ton of respect. The Dallas team that let's see what they look like throughout the course of the year, right? Like if you're talking about the NFC West, like San Francisco is the favorite there, but I think a lot of people still believe that the Rams can be a Super Bowl caliber football team. There are plenty of other teams, and if the Cardinals are at least going to be a 500 range team. The NFC North is very good up and down. The South is just the South's arguably the South is battling the AFC South to be the worst division in football. Okay. So at some point you just pick up wins by simply walking on the field. So that on top of the fact that, yes, I think they happen to be very good. That on top of the fact that you mentioned Baker's performance, they've still got a wide receiver room that is stacked. They've got weapons all over the place. Like this is a really, really good Tampa Bay team. Why would they not be in contention to be the number 1 seed? And if you give Tampa Bay home field advantage in the playoffs, why aren't they a Super Bowl contender? Like by its very definition, if you're the number 1 seed in your conference, I believe that makes you a Super Bowl contender.
No doubt. And look at their schedule. I think the way their schedule shakes out is, very advantageous. Obviously, being in a crap division, that's easily 5 wins, if not 6. And then they get some of the toughest games at home. They get the Eagles at home. They get the 49ers at home. And yes, they have a couple of West Coast road trips. They go to the Seahawks, and later in the season, they go to the Rams. And yes, they have to go to Buffalo in November, a Florida team. And Buffalo in November, I don't love. But just looking at their schedule right here, I see a very clear and very obvious path to 10 wins. And who's to say that they can't steal a win here and there against a team or in a game that they're not supposed to win? So I'm very high on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I think that they sneakily have one of the deepest and best rosters, not just in the NFC, but in the NFL, that people aren't talking about. I don't think that people realize that Bucky Irving was 1,000+ yard running back last year. They added Emeka Egbuka to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. That's sneakily one of the better wide receiver rooms in the NFL. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think, are one of the best and deepest teams that nobody is talking about right now, Fitz.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Emeka Egbuka. I was covering the draft for Yahoo Sports, and I remember that night as we were doing the live stream, the reaction of everybody was like, man, that almost feels redundant, because the wide receiver room is so deep for them already. They've got guys that sort of do that was the logic. That was the logic as the pick happened. By the time we came back together the next day, it was like, no, I really like that pick. You take nothing away for all the college football we've covered. Emeka Egbuka is one of the top wide receivers in college football. And you just added one of the top wide receivers in college football to a stacked veteran wide receiver room that can help him quickly develop into an effective wide receiver in the league. I feel like Tampa Bay is doing everything smart right now. Like you're right. I don't know why it feels invisible. And I don't know why we don't want to pay attention to it, because Tampa Bay certainly has in the past had the rock star players and the rock star coaches and the rock star appeal. And I think they have that again right now. It just feels like as a general society, we're so obsessed right now with the Lions and the Vikings, even the Bears and Washington and Philly. And Tampa Bay is an afterthought. But I think if there's anything I've learned in conversations I've had with Baker, he doesn't care anymore. He doesn't care about being an afterthought. So you've got a Tampa Bay team that's walking with no pressure on their shoulders, just trying to win games, Caroline.
Lions, Vikings, and Bears. Oh my. What a scary little NFC. And I think, I'm giving the Bucs all of this praise, deservedly so. And I always try and check myself. Okay, what am I missing here? What am I not acknowledging here that I just want to ignore because I feel so empowered to have this take, the Bucs being one of the best teams in the NFC? That's the only thing that I can see that could hold the Bucs back from being one of the top teams in the NFC is injury. Is that fair? And that's a risk for every single team in the NFL. It's something that's kind of completely out of your control. I'm not worried about Baker taking massive, steps backwards. Is he going to have a 4,500 yard passing season this year? I don't know. But I'm not worried about Baker, taking steps back because Baker is a vet. And because we've seen this season, I've seen him put a couple of really solid seasons together. I'm not worried about them defensively. I'm not worried about having enough weapons offensively. Right now, I think the only thing standing between the Bucs and being one of the top teams in the AFC is not beating enough of these NFC contenders and injury. And injury is a risk for everybody.